Hello, and welcome to People of the Pod, brought to you by American Jewish Committee. Each week, we take you beyond the headlines to help you understand what they all mean for America, Israel, and the Jewish people. I'm your host, Manya Brashear-Pashman. It is always a joy to watch the Olympic Games with my children. I must confess, not until I had children did I watch the Paralympics. If you want to see strength, grit, and resilience on a heroic level, behold British cyclist Sarah Storey claim her 18th gold. My son's favorite sports are wheelchair tennis and table tennis, so he was particularly excited when I told him I had the opportunity to sit down with two proud Jewish athletes who competed in this year's Paralympic Games in Paris. 23-year-old Ian Seidenfeld and 49-year-old Tahl Leibovitz are members of the USA 2024 para-table tennis team. They're here to talk about their approach to the sport and what it means to be a Jewish athlete. Ian, Tahl, welcome to People of the Pod.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It is really good to be here. I'm very excited about this.
So what drew you to this sport, to table tennis? Ian, how about you start us off?
Yeah, I don't know if I was ever interested in table tennis, but my dad was the table tennis coach, runs the table tennis in Minnesota with the Minnesota Table Tennis Federation. So it was always kind of just a part of life in that when I was 4 or 5 years old, I'd want to go with my dad to work and kind of be around him and play, and it just happened to be table tennis that he was coaching. So I didn't even know what was going on. But it was something that I enjoyed to do, to kind of hang out with my dad a little bit.
I was in the South Queens Boys and Girls Club. That was kind of in Queens, South Richmond Hill. And they had a lot of different things. I was doing martial arts there, which I really liked a lot. And my trainer was saying, if you do table tennis, it's going to help you with your reflexes. You're going to be faster. And I started doing table tennis, and I kind of got drawn into it. And I really liked the challenge of it. It's very similar to chess. It's like chess and running at the same time. I do a lot of jujitsu now. It's similar to that. You're trying to solve things. So it's very interesting.
You were born with a physical disability that makes it difficult to kind of move on your feet and to straighten your arms or flex your wrists. So I'm curious how you've balanced that. How have you overcome that?
Another good question. And most people don't even ask that. And that's probably somebody that had been playing table tennis probably for like 10 or 20 years would kind of notice. I have osteochondroma, so I have limited supination and pronation. You can't really see. If I'm walking, you can't see any disability, but I have bone tumors all over my body. They're benign, so it restricts movement. So to answer that, I had to find a way to adapt. So when I hold the racket, I change the grip a lot. And I would say the two things that I never thought I would become this great player, you never really know. But when I was watching the best athletes in the country, in the world, I started competing against them eventually. And I started trying to think, okay, what would be difficult? How could I make their match difficult? Not trying to beat them, but how could I make these matches very difficult for them? I started doing that a lot. And then I built a style. And then, of course, really believing that you can compete against anyone. I say those two things. And then I don't know, I don't know what happened after. It took about 8 years. And I just started doing really well, both in the able-bodied and in the para competition.
Ian, can you talk a little bit about the preparation and training process for the Paralympics and other competitions as well?
Table tennis training, a lot of it happens on the table, as you might imagine. So we're on the table for 2 to 3 hour practice sessions. And then what I try and do outside of table tennis is, for me, cardio on the bike. I live near a lake B'dai Makaska in Minnesota. And so it's a very beautiful lake to ride around and get that kind of cardio in 2 to 3 days a week, and then playing on the table 3 to 4 days a week for myself. A lot of it is that hand-eye coordination is the biggest part, being able to react to the ball movement much quicker than others, I think is a defining factor, along with being able to understand spin. That's maybe the biggest difference in table tennis compared to other racket sports, is the amount of spin we can get on the ball.
Do you have a signature move or kind of signature maneuver that you use to best your opponents?
I think my best thing is variation. Because of my disability of dwarfism, I have shorter limbs, so I can't reach or move as far as others. So I try and control the table with angle of play as well as spin and speed variation. So it's a very, we'll call it a thinker's game, trying to outsmart the opponent in some ways and keep things very uncomfortable for them. That's kind of what I try and do to my opponents.
That's great. Keep them guessing as to what's coming their way. I love that. Well, what have been some of your challenges? In other words, are there particular strategies or moves that other players use that you have really tried to get better at confronting?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things, as I said, with my disability, with dwarfism, short stature and shorter limbs. I have had people use a short serve against me so that I can't reach the serve to start off the point. And we've kind of fought over the last 5 or 6 years for me to be able to use a paddle extension, which will basically allow me to reach the first serve and then take the extension off and play like a normal point afterwards. So that's, for me, kind of a big difference. The other big difference for my disability would be I can't play as long because my joints are very malformed. So I have higher levels of inflammation sooner. So I kind of practice less than most people.
So it seems like that would be something that they would regulate or accommodate. I'm kind of surprised that they would even allow a short serve in that kind of circumstance.
From how my dad described the Paralympics to me when he was playing in 1988 in Barcelona, he had won a gold medal there. At the time, it was probably more about building community and acceptance among disabilities. Just because we have a disability, we're not necessarily accepting of other disabilities. And so in those instances, you can see back then you were kind of learning to be around other people and accept their differences. I think now we've gotten to the point where a lot of it is about this higher level of competition. And so that competitive aspect has changed things a lot more. So maybe the short serves and tactics that might be considered underhanded are a little bit more accepted than I'd like it to be. But who am I to argue? I'm happy to be able to play.
You mentioned your father, Ian. He was a champion in the 1980s. He's now the coach of the USA Paralympic team. What other mentors or support systems have both of you had along the way?
Yeah, I think family is the biggest crutch for all of us. I know for my teammates, Jensen, he's the same age as me, and so he has a very good support system with his parents and his brother, myself with my parents and my sister. I think we're able to confide in them very honestly and speak candidly about everything that we're feeling. I recently had been talking to an energy coach as well, someone to kind of give better levels of positive energy, being able to stay more present in the moment and not get ahead of myself. And I tend to guide towards the negative aspects of things, getting upset or getting annoyed or frustrated. And so I'm trying my best to get out of that. And so I have been talking to someone to kind of help with staying positive in tougher times. So it's really about being able to be honest with yourself and with other people and not afraid to reach out. Because as an athlete that's competing in Paris, a lot of people want to help and do their best for you. And so you just have to be able to communicate in a mature way.
And what about you, Tahl? What does your support system look like?
Yeah, that's probably one of the most important things is when you connect to people that are, trying to help you along the way. Of course, my coach, Sean O'Neill, has been a very good mentor. He's a two-time Olympian, five-time national champion. He's helped me greatly, helped me study for, when I was doing my social work exams. We also have a lot of great coaches. Mitch Seidenfeld is our head coach. We have Vlad Farkas. He's amazing. He's a really good friend and somebody that runs the program as well. But I would say, yeah, those three individuals, and there's another person, Dr. Dov Kopler, who's a practicing medicine. He's helped me a lot as well. Of course, my wife. I've been married for more than 20 years. She's unbelievable, and we're best friends. And she's helped me. Without her, probably couldn't make these achievements not be possible.
I'm curious, has your Jewish identity played a role in your athletic success, your academics, or your professional careers?
Yeah, my Jewish identity. So I'm a Reformed Jew, but I think it's a lot about the community and family that I have that's really important to me, and I've been able to look up to them and what they've done in their careers and their lives and how they kind of view life in a lot of ways, to just enjoy enjoy family. And so I think I've taken a lot of that as being very important to me, being able to try and pursue both career and being consistent with my family.
I was born in Israel. I was born in Haifa. Obviously, I'm very connected to Israel. And I went to a thing called the Maccabi Games. That was in 1997. That was my first games. And the people, the experience, it was just so amazing. And that's the first time I had been back to Israel. I'm trying to think. I was 22 years old, I think, at that time. So I would say, yeah, there's Israel. I feel so good there. There's a very good connection to being there. So that's the positive note. And, and also coming up, on a negative thing, being Jewish, of course, it's not easy in some ways. I went through, a lot of obstacles and different things because of that.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the obstacles that you have encountered along the way that being Jewish have presented?
When I grew up, I lived in the street when I was a boy, for maybe 13 to about 21. But it's interesting, before that, even when I grew up in Howard Beach, and then eventually I was living in kind of like by Cypress Hills in New York City. And there's like a shame to being Jewish. Like I was, as like in some way from my peers, like I wasn't around a lot of Jewish people, and they were, they make fun of you. Like you feel this, and I didn't know anything really. I was only a kid. But I think having my grandfather was like a really good. He made spending time with him was a big difference. He was a Holocaust survivor. One thing I learned from him, which I think is so important, I think more people should do. When you look at the Jewish community, it's like the family. There's a very strong sense of family, and I feel even when I'm in Israel, because I'm very good friends with a lot of people on the table tennis team, the Israeli center. I feel such a good connection. Like I feel really a part of something, and that is really important.
So in other words, being part of that sports community and a team, there's something kind of Jewish about that in that family feel. You spoke about the negative. Of course, Israeli athletes competing in Paris, some have received death threats and hate messages online. And then at the soccer match between Israel and Paraguay, spectators were yelling Heil Hitler during the Israeli national anthem. As a Jewish athlete, as an Israeli-born Jewish athlete, is this hate something that you have encountered along the way, or is this hate just reserved for the athletes representing Israel?
I'll say two things to that. The first being that, obviously what happened, in October of last year, you feel something. You could say whatever you want. There's no words. I feel like I've overcome a lot of adversity, but to feel that, like that, you can't do anything. You feel so badly, so there's a connection, I think, from all of us. That is the first thing. So, and you look at what's happening in the schools, Columbia University, and a lot of these things. So there is a heightened sense of anti-Semitism for sure. And I would say that does happen. I'll give you one quick example, which is very, very interesting. I had to play a league match. This wasn't even too long ago. This was 2 months ago. So I had to play a league match, and there were, I'm not saying these people are bad or good, but they were from Egypt. There were two players, and then they came in and they said, do you know where we were? And I was like, okay, where were you guys at? And they said, well, we're in the mosque, and we were praying for the destruction of Israel. We were praying that Israel would be destroyed. I'm about to start a match with these guys, and obviously I'm a therapist, so I have a lot, patience, and I ended up winning against them, so they were not too happy. But the point is that I tend to think about, like, when people bring that, they have great difficulties within themselves, and of course you can match that, with anything. You can be aggressive with them, but I find if people sit long enough in some of these, I don't know if you want to call them delusions that they have, because a lot of people, we're just human beings. People hate Jewish people for no reason. Like, it's like they don't even know me. It's like you're hating somebody for something you don't even know them. So I think when people sit with that, they tend to, they spend a little more time with you. Sports can do that too. It kind of humanize people together. Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, you have actually called your birthplace your favorite place on earth. And I'm curious, how do you honor both your American and Israeli identities while representing the United States in competition?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would say for me, the thing, because I've been to a lot of different tournaments, the Paralympics, a lot of different things, the most incredible experience for me has been, like I mentioned, the Maccabi Games. So that's one thing. And I stay connected, and it's also not just what I'm doing. Look, I'm a table tennis player. I do the best I can, but there's some people that there's a student I work with. Her name is Esty Ackerman. She does a lot of public speaking. She was a great player. I trained her for many years. So I would say the answer is this sort of community, and to be connected to yourself, and also to be, even in therapy, actually, I'll say one other thing. I could say a lot. I work for I'm contracted for a few different places. And I said to one place, after this thing happened in Israel, I said, and again, I have no special ability. I just said, look, send me the people that were affected by Israel. I said, those are the people I want to work with now. I said, send me as many as you can, as much as you can. And then I started working with them. And the truth is, it's profoundly effective. Like there were, these people that can't function at work, it's something, some of them were very connected. They're affected in some way, obviously. So I just give what I can. I can't change the world, but I know I can give the best I can to people. And even if I do my small part, it's okay.
So after this year's Paralympics, what's next?
I think the goal is really to just try and feel comfortable and try and have fun out there, and the results will come. But after the Paralympics, I work for a company called Allianz, a global insurance company, and so I plan to continue working for them afterwards. And they're a sponsor of the Olympics and Paralympics, so they've been very supportive of my training. And so I plan to continue working for them and continue training for the next World Championships and the Maccabi Games. And we actually have our own Allianz Olympics coming up in 2026. So there's a lot more table tennis to be played. And ultimately, I hope to compete in LA 2028. So I might take a month or two off, but other than that, it'll be back to training as usual.
Well, I set a goal, and I wanted to try to continue to 2028 since I won my first gold medal in 1996. That was my biggest achievement. And so now I'm saying, all right, we have 2028 in LA, so I will continue to 2028. I'm in pretty good, playing pretty well, doing a lot of fitness, so I feel okay. And probably do that, and then I will see. Most likely I will retire, I think, although people keep pushing me to do another 2, but that would be 2036 would be my last one. So it's a little, 50 years old almost. So, but we'll see. Yeah, I think 2028, then I'll reevaluate.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you definitely want to share with our audience before we go?
I think when we're talking about acceptance and love, and trying to overcome our differences and challenges, I think the Paralympics can be a very good representation of what we can all do together, as the Olympics was founded as well, to find common ground among nations. And I think there is a lot of hate and rhetoric that's spoken throughout the U.S. and throughout the world, that hopefully people will be able to watch the Olympics and Paralympics and feel a greater sense of unity among people. And hopefully we won't have death threats and that kind of hate that's really unnecessary, I hope.
Well said. Thank you so much. Ian, Tahl, Mazel Tov.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by AJC. Our producer is Atara Lakritz. Our sound engineer is TK Broderick. You can subscribe to People of the Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or learn more at ajc.org/peopleofthepod. The views and opinions of our guests don't necessarily reflect the positions of AJC. We'd love to hear your views and opinions or your questions. You can reach us at peopleofthepod@ajc.org. If you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to tell your friends, tag us on social media with hashtag peopleofthepod, and hop on to Apple Podcasts to rate us and write a review to help more listeners find us. Tune in next week for another episode of People of the Pod.